Good morning y buenos días. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our panel and happy Latino Conservation Week. My name is Albert Arevalo, and I am the volunteer coordinator for the award-winning Brookside Gardens. A quick introduction to Latino Conservation Week. The week was started by the Hispanic Access Foundation in 2014. The goal of the week is to provide Latinos and others with the opportunity to get outdoors, to foster a connection with the environment, and to learn ways to protect our natural resources and its 8 years of wonderful protection. I'm joined by an excellent panel of my Montgomery Park colleagues. Our goal today is to share with you our personal career journeys, insight into some of the different careers available with parks, tips on how to get into the field, and answer any questions you might have. Before we start, a few quick housekeeping notes. First, we are recording this presentation, and we'll be posting the link to on our website, so you can refer back to it for any information that you missed or share it with colleagues that were unable to attend. Second, I want to direct your attention to the upper right-hand of your screen, where you will see a question mark. This is our Q&A box. You might have seen a note from me earlier saying that our conversation will start soon. This is where you can submit your questions or comments at any time throughout the presentation. We will set aside some time at the end of today's session to address the questions. And I will ask if folks could just bear with me as I filter through questions, and I appreciate your patience. First, I like each of our panelists to introduce themselves briefly, describe their journey that brought them to the park field. Was there a pivotal moment in your life that made you choose this path of conservation? And share a little bit about your role in Montgomery Parks today. So first, we'll start with Mitty.
Sorry about that, just had to unmute myself. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. So I have some pictures up here that I'll share with you really quickly as part of my bio and background. So on the left there, you can see me with my parents as an infant. My parents are Cuban exiles. I grew up in Miami. I learned to speak Spanish first. I actually didn't speak English until I went to preschool because we only spoke Spanish at home. And then there in the middle, you can see that I am riding horses in a parks facility in Miami, Florida, back in the 1970s. Parks were a very big part of our life when I was growing up. Cuban families, and I think this is probably more broadly true of Latino families in general, and it's something that you can notice if you visit Montgomery Parks on a nice day, love to take advantage of outdoor public places like parks. And I grew up going to parks in Miami, including Bill Baggs State Park on Key Biscayne. We used to pack the car full of a day's worth of food and basically move to the beach for the day with like 20 of our closest friends and family. And then on the right there, you can see that I am, I guess, third from the left, depending on how you're looking at this. And that's my graduation from Northwestern Law School. And that's relevant because while I was growing up in Miami, I had in my mind that I wanted to study biology and actually pursue a career in conservation. But somewhere along the way, partly because of sort of preconceived notions that my family had about what the path to career success in the United States looked like, I pursued a career in law instead and graduated from Northwestern University. I practiced law for a couple of years, and then when I had my second child, I stayed home for a little while. And when I went back to work after having taken a break away to raise kids, I pursued a different career path and ended up working for local government officials on planning and zoning and development issues. And ultimately, that led to where I am today. I was always interested in learning about how the built environment affects how people relate to each other and to how they live and to how sustainable their lifestyle is. And one thing that I learned along the way is that you cannot have great cities or strong and vibrant sustainable communities without great parks. And that is how I ended up as Deputy Director of the Montgomery County Parks Department, where I oversee 4 divisions, our Communications and Partnerships Division, Park Planning and Stewardship, our Management Services, and our Park Design and Development Divisions. So I relate this to you because one of the messages that I hope that people will take away today is that there's more than one way, more than one path to a career in parks. And there isn't just one skill set that is valuable in the Parks Department or even in conservation. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Midi. Next, we'll have Carlos.
Thank you, Albert. Hola a todos. Hola, mi gente. ¿Cómo están? My name is Carlos de la Torre. I am a park naturalist at Meadowside Nature Center currently. And a little bit about my cultural background. I come from a Mexican background specifically. I have exposed myself to other cultures, so I could also say a little bit that maybe I'm part Peruvian just from my exposure. But as you're seeing on the pictures, or as you'll see right now, you know, I spent a lot of years in Mexico. I was born in the Bay Area, me and my 2 brothers, and you know, we like many families, you know, they're always deciding what's best for their kids, and we went back to Mexico. So my first culture, my first language was Spanish, and I did kindergarten, I did elementary, and you're able to see some pictures there with my family. On the top right, you see my school group. That might have been maybe 5th grade, and my school group, and you know, that's how I identify myself. When I was little, I didn't know that I even had an American citizenship, or I didn't know how that worked. I didn't know what that meant. I would just enjoy my life, and it was all normal to me. It was, you know, I was fitting in with everyone. I was happy. There was no issues with anything. And then we decided to move back to the U.S. for different opportunities, back to the U.S. And that's where I spent 8 years in Texas. In Texas, I did high school, and I did my university. I had different challenges though coming back. It was a cultural shock. You know, I was basically coming from just a Spanish background into a whole different culture. I didn't know English. I didn't know how to fit in, and at the same time, I was introverted. So that just made it a bigger challenge to grow into something that of finding myself, who I am, and what I'm doing, and where am I going. Moving forward, I was able to come in all the way to the position I am right now as a park naturalist. You can see the picture in the middle of me holding a snake. I've been here with the Maryland National Parks and Planning Commission for 1 year. Most of my past experiences have involved working with the Park Service in different spots, working with the Student Conservation Association as a volunteer. So you can see on the top right, I am in historical outfit, a Spaniard in the forts of San Juan in Puerto Rico. At the bottom right, you're seeing me in the uniform of a wildland firefighter. So I was a FFT2, if you know the acronym, but that's a wildland firefighter out there. And I was able to, you know, I think that was in a prescribed burn in Catoctin nearby here, but I had the exposure as I was in the Park Service, in the National Park Service, to try out different things, to see what I wanted and what I didn't like. You can see on the picture on the left, I am there presenting and interpreting in one of my favorite memorials, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. That's a memorial that I found deep connection with. I had, you know, it had a fit with my culture, with the struggle, and I was able to connect the people and facilitate that connection with the people on how we are doing, how we were doing, and how we're doing right now in the civil rights movement. And all of this was very personal to me and personal to a lot of people. So this is what made me who I am. It made me a person that is a fan of making those connections to historical, to natural resources, and through all this time, I've met a lot of people, and it's been a great journey so far. So I look forward to continuing it. So thank you for your time.
Thanks for sharing, Carlos. I appreciate having a fellow Texan on the conversation. So next we'll have Annalie. Annalie, mic's yours.
Thank you, and hello everyone. My name is Annalie Galeas, and I'm a Senior National Resources Specialist here in the Trails section of the Park Planning and Stewardship Division of Montgomery Parks. I'm a Montgomery County native, grew up in Wheaton, Maryland. Growing up, I had very little exposure to parks and the natural environment. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, sorry. So, I mean, other than me riding my bike outside or going to the park at the playground, my family didn't spend time in nature or the woods. That just wasn't really a thing in my environment and in the built environment, which I spent a lot of my time in. It wasn't until high school where I exposed myself to an environmental science class that I kind of just took, like, maybe I'll go try this class out for a little bit. That really piqued my interest for the first time. And from there, that was really where I decided maybe I wanted to pursue something like that in college and in my future career. However, no one I knew or anyone that looked like me did not have jobs in that field, so I had very little knowledge of what that might be. If you look at the photos, this is me in my current position here in the trail section in the top left. That's me and my team. Part of our team, we are basically in charge of the planning, the construction, implementation of our 250 plus trails in Montgomery County. That's Cherry Anderson right there with the white bike. That's me kissing a frog. That's me on a bike, which I also get to spend some of my workday doing, which is extremely gratifying. And there's me doing a different part of my job that I've done in previous years, which is biological monitoring and electrofishing with some of our other colleagues here within parks. So basically, I think that the opportunities there exist, and that's really why it was important for me to be part of the panel today, that except the exposure is not always there for kids growing up in school and maybe in very heavily minority communities, that they are not exposed to what kind of careers there are out there aside from being a doctor, being a lawyer, or being in trades. So that's what I have to share, and thank you for having me. And I'm going to pass it to David, I believe.
That's correct.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. I was looking at Darlene's pictures in there. Sorry about that. Anyway, I do apologize. I don't have any pictures. There won't be any pictures of me. I guess that's back in my days that there were no cameras. So I grew up in the village in El Salvador, honestly, and my parents didn't have cameras when I was little. So my name is David Quintanilla. I was born in El Salvador. I grew up in a farm in a village. So I would say my career journey began with studying agronomy or agriculture in college, because I still do enjoy nature, and also I love working outdoors, except when it's, heat index over 100 or whatever, but I'm getting too old for that. I first came to the U.S. As a U.S. Central America Peace Scholar. That was in 1999, I believe. No, I'm sorry. Yes, 1989, 91. To pursue a graduate study in agronomy at Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama. So that was my first choking, I guess, event, going in there. It was culturally, everything was so totally different. I started working for Montgomery Parks in 1995. I came in as a gardener one. For those who are totally different, of course, background. So I was doing the maintenance, planting flowers, taking care of landscape beds throughout the parks. I started with the Cabin John maintenance facility, and throughout my career, I worked actually on almost every facility in the Southern Division. But at the same time, I went and worked at also to the horticultural division, now called Half-Feed Division. I was at the Pope Farm for about 7 years. And of course, the different positions, I went from worker 2 to worker 3, worker 4 to nursery tech. And then from Pope Farm, I was promoted to manager 1 down on Meadowbrook. That was in 2005. So I've been managing at different locations. From Meadowbrook, I went to Cabin John, and then I went to manage Whitten Regional Park as well. I acted as a senior manager. And of course, from Whitten Regional, I moved to Little Bennett, which is the Northern Parks Division, for those who are familiar with it, which was totally different. I was making a kind of sort of like a joke yesterday that having moved to the Northern Parks basically was like going to heaven. It was much easier. I spent my time actually managing the work programs instead of dealing with staff issues and concerns. So. And from Little Bennett, actually, I became the senior manager out there. I guess Green Farm, aka Shady Grove, for those who have been here a while. We used to be a Shady Grove, but now we're Green Farm. So, as a senior manager now, I deal with I manage budgets, union staff, managers, and supervisors as well, making sure we have 45 of our parks, local parks and urban parks that we manage, they're safe, and, we offer amenities that our communities, and users deserve. So that's where I am. All right. Thank you very much. I think from here, I will pass it to Darlene.
Hey, folks. How is everyone? Happy Friday. Thank you, PACP, for inviting me to this very important dialogue. I'm really honored. So my pictures, my background, that's on the left-hand side is a family picture, a nice little Easter picture of my family in New York. And then to the right is, I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, but what we're doing on there, we're on the Panama Canal. So with that being said, I've been with the commission now for 21 years. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Resource Management. Again, I'm a native New Yorker who grew up in a very diverse community. And growing up, children were required to play outdoors. I guess some of you, if you're around my age, your parents would tell you, get out of the house, and don't come back until the lights come on. And you better come back with those lights on. And or else you'll get in trouble. So fast forward, I moved to Maryland in the mid-90s. I've been married now for about 25 years to a wonderful Latino man born and raised in Panama. And that's why that photo you just saw was us riding on the boat down the Panama Canal. And we also have 5 wonderful children. Yes, I look a little bit young. And although I began my career in New York, primarily working for private sector, commercial real estate companies, when I moved to Maryland, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So I have to agree with Mitty that you may think of your life as one path and you just, you end up someplace else. And so because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do when I got here, I signed up with a temporary agency. And one day I got a call and to work at Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. And that was for about 2 weeks assignment. But as you can see, it turned into 21 years later. And I started at the community-based planning at the time. I was later promoted to a term contract position and then promoted once again to a full-time position in Management Services Division in the planning department. Then I was promoted again to the director's office as the executive assistant to the park and planning director. Well, I would say about a year or two later, a position opened up in the parks department, in the human resources department. I said, well, hey, why don't I try doing that? Since my life has just been taking all of these different turns, I decided to come over and was welcomed to the Management Services Division in the Montgomery County Parks. And I do want to give a shout out to Management Services Division staff. We have an amazing team, and it's led by Division Chief Suchi Verio. And so shout out to MSD team. In my current role, I am to lead, develop, and implement some outreach, recruiting, and onboarding plans for the department. I'm also promoting the advancement of department diversity and inclusion programs for diverse non-traditional populations. And what does that mean? That means we reach out to community youth, military veterans, disabled individuals, neurodiverse individuals, interns, temporary contingent workers, and English as a second language. So we are doing a fabulous job in reaching out to very diverse communities and population. So in my spare time, I mentor at a nonprofit organization called Future Link, and we work with low-income first-generation college students to help them develop their career skills, as well as provide them with resources so they can achieve lasting and economic self-sufficiency. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to Albert.
Thanks, Darlene. I was actually reflecting on a lot of your introductions. Mary, I had the privilege of visiting some of the wonderful state parks in Florida earlier this year. I got to visit Panama back in 2016. So the Panama Canal was truly like a beautiful experience. I was able to visit El Salvador with my partner a couple of years ago. Wonderful food, probably the best pupusas I've ever had in my life. And Montgomery County has just become like this wonderful place for me to kind of begin my life. I've been in the area for about 10 years, and I've been in parks for about 4. And I was actually also reflecting about my own personal growth. And Annalie, how you were saying is that not everybody's life is necessarily linear. And I remember driving through our old or still current MRO building, which is our administrative building off of Georgia Avenue in Silver Spring. And before then, I was not employed with the parks, but I was just kept on reading Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, a very long name, but I want to work for them. And fast forward, I got extremely lucky, and I'm working with some amazing colleagues. I feel very thankful, privileged, and humbled to be, continuing the wonderful legacy of MNC PPC. And I will say it's taken me some time to say that so quickly. Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, MNC PPC. But with that, I do want to remind folks that please share some of your questions on the Q&A. I will be saying some questions that are directed to some of the panelists here. If the other panelists are inclined to also answer, I do encourage that as well. And first, I'll start with a question for you, Carlos. So Carlos, can you share more about how you overcame the challenges to reach your goal of working in parks conservation, and what steps did you take?
Can you hear me? Sorry, okay. Thank you, Albert. Thank you for that question. So, you know, challenges, just like all of us, we all have a variety of them. And sometimes, you know, when you come from a different background, or if you struggle a little more, you might you might go through more challenges. But I see that as a, you know, it's a good thing too. The more challenges you go through younger or earlier on, the more resilient you can be in the future. So I'm taking that in a positive note. But knowing that, there's, you know, some of the ones that maybe I could highlight are the low financial income, for example. That's something I thought it was normal living in Mexico the way I was, and then I come into the U.S. and all of a sudden we're considered poor, even though to me that was still normal. I never really saw it as a downside unless people mentioned it, because, you know, it was normal. We had food, we weren't really struggling, and we just kept moving forward. You know, another challenge is that the culture shock. For those who have traveled abroad, you're able to see that difference, that whenever you go into another country, your body language is different, the style of communication is different, the slangs, the way you eat, the different kinds of respect, religions, it's all very different. And you know, growing up is a challenge for me because I didn't know what was normal. But the more I exposed myself, the more I thought, the more I could understand better. And just understanding people in general, understanding how to navigate through the jobs, understanding how I can reach my goals. Those are all different part of the challenges. And how did I overcome them? Well, you know, we live in such an interconnected world. Everyone around the world is always has one goal in mind, and that is to do better for themselves, better for the family, better, and mostly better for the kids. So they'll move around the country, they'll move around to other countries. In this case, my parents decided to move forward and try a life in the US to see how that was. You know, when I asked my mom how that was, she was very scared, and she actually, you know, she had a culture shock. She said it was too much work in the US, such a stressful life in the US, and it can be. I've seen different cultures are more relaxed and in that way. So we were born in the US, me and my two brothers, and then we went back into Mexico. That's where we spent the rest of my, you know, I'd say around 8 years in Mexico. And then I was just, you know, living free like a kid. Didn't really think about too much of anything. And then I moved back into the US to see how we can take advantage of the privilege of being a US citizen. So we came back into the US. We had to learn English, had to readapt into the new environment, and you know, live that life. And you know, I never really knew the potential that I could have until I went into college. That's when I started, you know, in a way, spreading my wings. I know that there was so many opportunities, so I just started taking them all. You know, I did 3 internships every summer. I did 2 study abroads on the winter time. You know, it was scary to go out. I went to New Zealand, to South Africa to do study abroads into animal conservation and wildlife research. And it was scary, it was exciting, it was uncomfortable, but that's what we all need to move forward, to grow. Putting ourselves in that spot of uncomfort to, you know, discover ourselves. So moving forward, I wanted a different adventure. I went into Peace Corps and I took another challenge. I'm like, how can I make a difference in the world? Which was, you know, maybe a little too ambitious, but I was able to take another look of how a different lifestyle, and that's where I was in Peru. I did 2 years in Peru, did Peace Corps there, and I focused on community development, focusing on the environment. So I was able to, you know, manage a lot of different projects, connect the community, teach English, use my Mexican Spanish, where I learned Peruvian Spanish. There's the more I traveled within South and Central America, the more of the accents I could learn, which is pretty exciting. I'm always asking myself, what accent is that? What accent is that? Because my accent is just blended in now. Now it's not Mexican. and it's not Peruvian. I don't know what it is. And moving forward, I came back into the U.S. and I decided to continue my, my dream, what I thought I was a dream, which is to become a park ranger. I joined, had a job at Lassen Volcanic National Park as a seasonal, and then I continued on to get a permanent job in the federal government with the National Park Service, with my NCE, that non-competitive eligibility from Peace Corps. So Peace Corps has that benefit. I move on forward, and that's where I spent 3 years in the National Mall. And I honestly, I didn't expect to like the National Mall because I wasn't really a historical person. So this is another example of how getting yourself into an uncertain place can still be a surprise, can still be a benefit, and still be an impact on your life. So I ended up connecting to civil rights, connecting to war, to understanding war a different way, and that was something new to me. But when I was there, that's how I was able to connect with the resource a little better. So some of the qualities that I gained to overcome these challenges over years has been just having an open mind, being very flexible, being an active listener, listening more than talking in a way, and then surrounding yourself with the people, with the kind of person you want to become. Choosing the friends actively that way, and also just not just waiting for things to happen to you, but being proactive. Being proactive and persistent have been, I'd say, the way I'm able to reach where I want to go. Me waiting for the ball to come to me hasn't really been something that happens normally. You have to seek the ball. You have to reach the opportunity. And this comes with a lot of patience. It comes with a lot of consistency, and also being optimistic and understanding. Sometimes, you were rejected in a job, and okay, well, that was good to know. What did I learn there? So you move on, and your life can easily change just from, applying for things that you never think you would be doing. And even if you feel uncomfortable, it's still, when you look back at it in hindsight, it's still a good benefit. So that's a lot of what I ask myself too is, how can I become the difference that I want to see, instead of me complaining or pointing fingers, or how can I make a difference in this in this current issue of moving forward with diversity inclusion in the workplace and in the community, and specifically where I work at, diversity inclusion and our nature center. So I'll leave this question to you too. How can you become the difference that you want to see? Thank you for your time, Albert.
Thanks for that, Carlos. I was also actually reflecting about some of our shared stories. One personal challenge that I had was growing up in a border city in Texas, was kind of necessarily code switching from one culture to the next, but also like having, the privilege of speaking two languages. And I thought that was a challenge at first. And then that's something that I've been able to leverage within my career. So I felt extremely fortunate to kind of leverage something that has become part of my identity to, my career. So next, I do see some questions popping up. I will say that please keep filtering those questions in, and then after we're done with some of our direct questions, we'll be addressing those. So thank you for those who are sending those questions in. The next question is for you, Annalie. So my question is, how can we raise awareness to recruit a new generation of environmental stewards?
Thanks, Albert. That's a great question. I definitely thought that my experience in elementary and even high school was very limited as far as exposure to just environmental science and programs, not so much like what my children are able to achieve now that I know where to send them. Like, I know if I want to send them to a nature camp, I know I can send them there. But I have to be the one to like know. I can't imagine my mom when I was growing up saying, okay, well, I would like my daughter to get out in nature. That just wasn't a thing. And I think that's the case for a lot of people who just came to this country, a lot of people who maybe there's a language barrier where they just don't know what programs exist for their kids. So they have to rely on the school system to give that exposure to their children. And I think at least Montgomery County, I think is getting better, you know, with like STEM and STEAM and all these kind of exposures that they're giving our kids. But I think there's definitely some work to be done. Does that answer your question? I'm thinking more along those lines, like what you can instill in those young kids. I mean, me as a kid, like I said, I wouldn't say no interest in, you know, but my parents didn't take me camping or anything like that. That real exposure to nature. If you said to me you wanted to go to a park as a kid, I'm thinking a playground. Now, working for parks for the past 5 years, I have a way broader sense of park. I mean, our vast Stream Valley parks are huge expanses of forests. So I really think that appreciation has gone a long way, but there were several years where I did not get that exposure. So
thanks for that. I do want to take some of what you were saying and then maybe bring it up to a general question to ask everyone. But I do want to ask a question to David first. So David, my question to you is, what are some ways we can help make our spaces more inclusive for the diverse population we serve in Montgomery County?
Great question. Well, like everybody said, you know, I mean, like Midi and Darlene, that we have a lot of work, you know, to come. Of course, you know, we all have to make it happen to, you know, as fast as possible, or depending on what positions we hold, try to make the changes we're able to make. I'll give a good example, in my opinion, as a manager or as a senior manager. In my position, I'm able to make some of the changes that I think, you know, need to happen. For instance, when I managed Wheaton Regional Park, you know, I think it was about 8-10 years ago, I was able to kind of, during my park inspections, to see the community or the visitors or the park patrons, you know, using our parks. You know, I noticed there was a lot of Latinos, you know, playing soccer in open areas. You know, just with putting 2 sticks, you know, on each end, like as goals, and just enjoying the open spaces. So as a manager, you know, I was able to influence or make the difference, meaning that I had to work with Mark Wallace, for instance, with the permit office, you know, in terms of switching some of the softball fields that were very limited, that usually got very limited use. I turned those into soccer fields, you know, permanent soccer fields. So the communities, you know, were able to use more of our amenities, you know. So my goal is to see the kind of the communities we serve as managers, basically. And I try to make it more inclusive, you know, to the to what their needs are. It was easy for me to identify as a Latino, to see the Latino communities, you know, in the Wheaton area, having the need to have more soccer fields, you know, to enjoy, or parks. You know, on the other hand, we had a lot of tennis courts, for instance, that have very limited, almost no use in the area. So I started back then working with Mark Wallace, you know, to see if we can come out with like a indoor soccer instead of tennis, you know. So now I am part of that group now with Mark and other, you know, colleagues, you know, trying to come out with, they call it sport courts. So it's like an enclosed, you know, it's turning some of the low-use tennis courts into like indoor soccer. So that's basically, I mean, as a manager, I'm able to make that influence and suggestions. I think that would be probably something that we as managers should consider the community we serve. I mean, they're all taxpayers. I think that's all.
Yeah, thanks, David. And I think I also reflect on the privilege that I have as well as a manager, is that when I take in consideration, our candidates for positions, I want to be conscious and considerate of our community to make sure that they reflect our community. So thank you for your thoughts and your answers. So my next question is for you, Darlene. So my question is, can you share some of the steps Montgomery Parks is taking to increase diversity in the workforce? I think you're muted, Darlene.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Wonderful. As I mentioned earlier, the outreach and diversity work that I'm currently doing, one of the things that I really would like to emphasize to our hiring managers, and both of you just touched on this, is that we really must recognize that we'll be missing an incredible opportunity if we don't examine and dismantle design systems of exclusion. So with that, prior to the COVID-19, our HR recruiting professionals within Management Services Division, we decided to develop a strategic calendar for the remainder of this year, 2020, so that we can attend more diverse job fairs and diversity conferences. And one of the first ones we were looking at was a conference called the Mobilized Green Conference, which is held at American University every year in Washington, D.C. The conference is an opportunity for recent diverse graduates from across the United States who are very interested in seeking paid internship opportunities and hands-on experience while working on, green-related projects and possibly policies. Another area we've been reaching out to is naturally Latino Conference that was held at the Audubon Naturalist Society, also in Chevy Chase, Maryland. And their mission is partnering with Latinx communities to strengthen the local environments. We also attended 2 historically Black colleges to increase our visibility to African American graduates. And then just recently, we partnered with the planning department with a company called Professional Diversity Network. And this company is fantastic because they scrape all of our commission's vacant positions and post them to 8 affinity groups. So that is really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to getting a lot of information from them and how we are reaching out to folks. We also work with the Diversity Council Committee. They are working on some really good strategic plans, and what they also are doing are conducting diversity training for various levels within the commission. And one of their tactics, which I really appreciate, is addressing microaggression. And so with their plans, they're also trying to schedule teleworking as a means to address some cultural and religious holidays, which would be open for everyone. That's really, really aggressive. And then they will also be hosting the Women's History Month celebration for LGBTQ plus events, as well as a One Commission event for both counties, Prince George's and Montgomery County. I also want to mention during the recent commission's June meeting, the commissioners from both sides, Prince George's and Montgomery County, both counties unanimously passed the MNC PPC resolution declaring solidarity for the national movement to end injustice and violence against Black people. So that is truly a step in the right direction. And then finally, the Parks has provided unconscious bias training to our hiring managers. We have also encouraged our hiring managers to use more behavioral-based interview questions, diversity, equity, inclusion interview questions, and now they're asked to complete a form that outlines their hiring criteria even before they receive their application. So with that and those steps, I think we're on the right path, but we still, we have lots of work to do. And I just want to leave with this is that, our communities, as all of you have mentioned, populations are rapidly changing. And if we intend to stay current, we must actively embrace the richness of these unrepresented communities that are vastly growing around us. So with that said, back to you, Albert.
Thanks, Darlene. I appreciate everything that you've added. I also want to hear from Mitty, having her, I personally appreciate seeing a strong woman of color in a position of leadership and how she's been able to navigate her role. And Mitty, if you would like to add something, I'd appreciate it as well.
Thank you so much. So I do want to say that I'm pretty proud of what a diverse workforce we have in Montgomery Parks. We are not exactly where we need to be. We're particularly seeing less representation of Asians and Latinos in the Montgomery Parks workforce as compared to our representation in Montgomery County as a whole, which has been growing over the last 20 years. Our demographics in Montgomery County have shifted markedly, and our workforce is still a little behind in this regard. But why is it important that we focus on this? We have about 45% of our workforce is over the age of 50, which means that over the next 15 years, we're going to see a big wave of retirements. The good news is that because Montgomery Parks and the Commission as a whole is such a great place to work, that people tend to stay here a long time and they make a lifetime career out of this. And that's wonderful because we benefit from all their experience. But it does mean that because there isn't a lot of turnover, it can take a while to shift the demographics of our workforce so that it more closely reflects our larger community. So that's why panels like this are really important to me and to the other people on this panel, because we want to encourage people from every background to consider pursuing a career in the Parks Department so that ultimately we will reflect our larger community. But again, a lot of the news is really positive. Almost half the workforce is women. I have to say that there is a strong representation of women and people of color, even at the top levels of the department. We have 10 divisions, and out of those 10 divisions, 6 are headed by women and or people of color. And I think that's pretty remarkable. And then of course, I'm deputy director of the Parks Department. And this matters. Having people who look like us and who look like the rest of the community in positions of leadership sends the message that this is an organization that represents the community and is a positive place to work. So thank you. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Albert.
Thank you, Mitty. I've really appreciated hearing everybody's insight. I do want to queue up a question that I kind of thought of that you were thinking about, that you were answering, Annalee. But what can we do to make park careers become more mainstream? So I want to pitch that question first to you, Annalee, and then Carlos, and then afterwards, if somebody else wants to chime in, please let me know. Annalee?
Thanks, Albert. How can we make parks careers more mainstream? I mean, I think we definitely do a good job of pushing out to the local colleges and universities. I don't know that we have too many internship opportunities available for the younger kids, high schoolers. We do offer a lot of volunteer opportunities, but even in my experience working with volunteers that want to come volunteer for parks, whether they be Boy Scout or Eagle Scout groups, they do come from a certain like a limited demographic, and I don't know if that's just because that's generational knowledge of where to go for where they should go, and other groups don't know. Other maybe schools from the down county perhaps are not really aware of such volunteer opportunities. Other organizations such as the LACY, Latin American Youth Conservation Group, I'm sorry if that's not their proper name, but I mean, that's one group that's,
yeah, Latin American Youth Council.
okay, sorry. With the Montgomery County Conservation Corps or something like that.
Yes.
Anyway, they're a fantastic group.
Yes.
That really, they work with us at Parks a lot, and I commend them for bringing a lot of kids that maybe wouldn't necessarily have the opportunities or the advantage of having that generational knowledge to come to the parks and do various work, whether it's working at Pope Farm on their trees, or working on our trails, or working in our community gardens or anything like that. I really think that programs like that, while they're fantastic, are few and far between. So definitely an increase in us reaching out to them. We can't expect them to reach out to us. We should also give them the, hey, we're here, you know, we're here to teach you. There's so many different jobs at the parks, anything from conservation, planning, historical and cultural, wildlife, and then everything in between that. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate your response. It also made me aware of the responsibility the Office of Volunteer Services offers. Is it becomes a pathway for our students, especially students who were very lucky in Montgomery County that need to do their student service learning hours. So a lot of students use Brookside Gardens as a venue to learn. And I feel that it's a very important opportunity for us. And I feel very hopeful for the future of future park professionals. Like you were saying, Mitty, you know, I find something like the commission being a very unique organization, because I don't necessarily always find people like David and Darlene who have been in organizations for as long as they are. So I think that's something that's important for me, and I think that's something that's important for, you know, younger people that are coming in. And Carlos, I also want to hear your thoughts. So just to refresh your memory on the question, what can we do to help parks careers become more mainstream? I'll turn that to you, Carlos.
Thank you, Albert. Can you hear me pretty well? Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That is very relevant because we are seeing ourselves in the need to diversify the workforce, and but you know, we ask ourselves on how, you know, maybe why aren't these jobs popular? Maybe traditionally, you know, we haven't had a diverse workforce in the park system. And different various levels of government or you know, NGOs, and but it's you know, it's something that is also part of the culture. You know, I'm used to seeing Hispanic families enjoying their times in picnics, and it's also part of the exposure. For example, when I was growing up in Mexico, I was, you know, connected to nature in the way that we had our little backyard or el corral. And that's where we had a lot of fun with my brothers, just being outside, playing, climbing on the trees, and having a lot of fun. So I connected that way. We all connect to it differently. And, you know, one way to help, you know, in a way, make it more mainstream is to actively work on it, actively promote it, and expose it. Exposing it provides the opportunity for people to decide if they want to take the choice or not. And we can highlight it on how it has a lot of benefits, how it can be, you know, still, you know, part of a different work life that maybe you didn't think about looking into. So that's why it's important to look into expanding and strengthening youth programs, outreach opportunities, and you know, and having inclusivity within any public facilities. For example, providing programs in Spanish. So that's one of the things that we do at Meadowside Nature Center. We offer that opportunity for people to, to come in, different families, and find that connection in a language that they're comfortable with. And I could say we are currently working on that.
Thanks, Carlos. And then I do want to reflect on a comment that at Cuba Libre wrote, if we work with an organization called Green Latinos. So I can personally answer that. So Green Latinos is a coalition of environmental professionals that are, all over the US. You could be a member of Green Latinos. I just so happen to be one of the members. There's hundreds and hundreds of them all over the country. So it is a coalition network building organization. And we try to leverage with Green Latinos, with other organizations that are in the area that do local and national work. So we try to partner with them regularly. Also, I do want to address this question to Mitty, if you like, and then don't think I'm ignoring you, David and Darlene. I'll have some questions for you. So let me just post this question. Let me just look it up. And again, thank you everybody who's posting questions. Please keep coming them in. I'll get to them as quickly as possible. So let me see. So this question is from, and that's the challenge with technology, so bear with me. Let me scroll up. This is, anyone felt our park facility program can reflect more of cultural diversity? Any shareable moments and recommendations to suggest? This is from Garland.
Yes. Okay, so that's a great question. I will say that when I am out in the park system, I see incredible diversity in our parks. People from every race and age and ability and walk of life are out there enjoying our parks. And in fact, it's what makes parks so wonderful and so important, because they have the opportunity, when you design them well, to bring people together. Where I see less diversity, it's not really a result of what's happening necessarily in the park system, but more in terms of how we have historically designed our communities. And you see the impact of historic segregation and racism today, even in Montgomery County, where we have areas of the county that are predominantly white and higher income, and then other areas of the county that have more people of color and are lower income. And I think that that's something that people are becoming more aware of, and that needs to be addressed through different zoning and land use practices. One thing I think we can continue to do in the Parks Department to make sure that everyone feels welcome in all of our parks is to focus on how we design urban parks and how we program them in a way that responds to the needs and desires of the communities that use them. And that really requires maybe a different kind of outreach than what's historically been done in the past. I think we need to go to where people are and seek them out to get their input, instead of always relying on the kinds of public meetings that tend to attract a certain kind of demographic. I think, and we're doing some of this now, more online surveys, and really the activation itself of our parks and our urban parks in particular is a form of outreach, because when you bring people in, you have the opportunity to engage with them, and they have the opportunity to engage with each other. So I think those are some of the things that we can do to increase diversity in our parks and really make people feel comfortable and like the parks are there for them, and providing programs and services that they need and want to see. So thank you. That's a great question.
Thanks for that, Mitty. Let me queue up this next question. So let me Okay, so this is from Richard Allen, and the question is, if you have experienced the wrath of workforce public user discrimination, how have you responded to it? And then, Darlene, would you like to take a stab at that one?
Yes, and yes. I have, throughout my career, have experienced discrimination. Yes, it's uncomfortable. And how I've handled it was simply just approaching the person to tell them, or to at least share with them that, you know, this situation is not cool and that we need to, you know, resolve it, or we need to do some other measures to, you know, to address the situation. For folks who have already experienced that or are currently experiencing that, I would encourage them to come to the HR office, and we do have a team, and that we can, you know, discuss that. We have a labor relations specialist who can address those personal issues confidentially, and then we will make sure that they do get addressed properly. So that's my experience in that situation. And on the other hand, it was resolved amicably.
Yeah, thanks, Darlene. I also want to highlight your participation in the racial equity group that there's a couple of folks that are on this panel that are part of, Darlene being one of them. But I think something that I can speak of that has been piloted at Brookside Gardens was we were able to hire a practitioner to kind of lead some of these conversations. Also talking about microaggressions, and especially within our community. So I thought that was extremely fruitful and beneficial, and I've sincerely appreciated it. So let me, so thank you for your insight. Let me go through these questions really quickly. Multitasking at its best. Actually, while I start kind of looking through questions, I do want to talk about some more of your experience, David, if you don't mind. Like, so we have seen an increase in diversity in parks, and you and Darlene are seasoned employees within parks. But why do you think we've seen more diverse people working at parks, from your experience?
All right, I'll start. I would say my position helps, you know, in making this happening. In other words, I do have the final word, final say, you know, in terms of, you know, when I go to the interview, I try to get a very diverse panel, of course. I try to discuss with them, you know, my goal, you know, and as far as hiring the best candidate, instead of just hiring, you know, somebody that they feel comfortable with, or, you know, looking very similar to, you know, to most of the workers. So I have a great influence, I would say, you know, try to be as honest as possible when it comes to, you know, looking at the qualities or the experience of the candidates, you know, not only based the selection on the answers, you know, of the candidates, because even I have lived, or I have experienced that, you know, I mean, some of us are very good at expressing ourselves, you know. In my case, myself, I have a hard time. I mean, when I go to interviews, you know, I know I can do the work. It's just that I have a hard time expressing or talking about my experience, you know, versus somebody else, you know, that grew up here. I had to learn English, actually, until, you know, I was 18, you know, plus. So I'm still learning, of course, you know, but to me, the language has always been a barrier in the past. And a lot of times, even for seasonal staff that we hire, a lot of times the language is a huge barrier, but I know the work can be done by anybody, basically. As long as we have select the candidates, with the best attitude. Some of these positions we can pretty much train, anybody with the right attitude. So I always said I have been able to contribute to bring in diversity, to our sites, at least every facility that I have managed, in the past and now. I've tried to encourage, all my staff to, embrace diversity, for many different reasons. I mean, we all come from different backgrounds, different experiences in life, and great ideas, honestly. I mean, so, and again, I mean, I've been able to, to make a decision and make it happen. And I will continue as long as, I stay in the parks.
Thanks, David. I hope you don't retire anytime soon. Stay in parks as long as you can. So I do want to answer this. I do want to ask this question to Carlos. Carlos, this is a question from park staff. That's the name of the person who submitted the question. So the question is, very few people of color are on staff at Parks Nature Center, Montgomery County. Kids do not see themselves represented when they visit. Is MNC PPC focusing diversity and inclusion, hiring specifically at nature centers? Carlos?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. It's an important question. As you know, as that is the main exposure with the public. I am part of two, in a way, committees. I'm part of the Diversity Council of the MNC PPC, the whole organization, and also a diversity equity work group. And we, as a group, we're aiming to touch on this goal to increase the workforce diversity, and that includes training. That includes working collaboratively with different divisions. It's a work that not just one person can do it, not just one division can do it. And so I would say we're working towards that. Yes, and it's a great observation, because our goal is to represent the diversity of the community. And Montgomery County has a very diverse community, and we're glad for that. It's very rich to have that. And it is very important to have that, and maybe Hispanic, or maybe just a different kind of cultural background as a front face in the nature center, because we're the front face of the organization. We're the people that connect, the resources, the parks, the museums, and give it importance on how every person can connect to them differently. So I would say I'm personally working on it. The group here, the panelists are also working on it, and that's our goal.
Thanks, Carlos. And then I will say that I have worked with your immediate supervisor at Meadowside, and then that's something that we continue to have a conversation about. And then this question is something that I'll attempt to answer. So the question kind of comment reads, I do appreciate all the social media advertising for events or activities in Montgomery County parks, but I'm not sure if the messages really get to all Latino communities in the area. Don't get me wrong, social media is great, but I think advertisement should be a little bit more personal. Yes, I completely agree. We try to find, and this is something that we try to kind of be cognizant of and considerate of when we kind of reach our communities. We feel very fortunate that we reach a lot of people through our social media platforms, but that doesn't necessarily mean we can get everybody. So I'll use one example. We work with Brookside Gardens, and of course other park facilities have worked with an organization called it's the Department of Health and Human Services in Montgomery County, the Latino Health Initiative. So they work with the Latino community in the county. So we want to be cognizant of how we reach these community members. Sometimes it is through social media, sometimes it is through word of mouth, sometimes it is through flyers or just like speaking at meetings. So I think our communications department, I think our nature centers, I think all our different offices and parks try to reach organizations and communities, specifically the Latino communities, in other avenues aside from social media. So yeah, I think it's there's always room for improvement, and there's always challenges, and I think I've been very fortunate that my colleagues and myself have been kind of like taking on those challenges head on. So I want to be considerate of the time and see. So I did see a note from Mike Riley, and he just wanted to say, not a question. Let's see if I could remember where it is. Not a question, just wanted to say you're all rocking it. So thank you, Mike. And then actually, let's see. And then I guess my last question that I want to ask everyone is what is one thing you are hopeful for? And you could answer it however you feel appropriate. And if let's see, let me see how we had this. So if we could start with Mitty, then Carlos, and Annalie, David, Darlene, and then I'd be happy to queue up answer as well. So the question is, what is one thing you are hopeful for? And then we can start with you, Mitty.
That's a really good and kind of an interesting question that is, it's interesting to contemplate right now when we're going through so much nationally in terms of coming to a reckoning on issues, not just of, police violence against people of color, Black people specifically, but also so much turmoil, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and this is just a really, really hard time. But it's good to focus on what we think might be ahead of us that's positive, particularly at a hard time like this when we're going through so much. I think that one thing that I am looking forward to and am hopeful about is that we will have a sort of renewed understanding of how important direct human connection is when this is all over, and that we will continue designing our open spaces in our cities in such a way that we build connections between people from all different backgrounds, and that ultimately that helps pave the way toward a better future. And the Parks Department is going to be at the center of that kind of effort going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mitty. Carlos, would you like to give your response?
Yes. Can you hear me pretty well? Great. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. That is, we do want to focus that even though this is a uncomfortable, maybe a sad, frustrating topic, that it's important to be very hopeful, to look at the light at the end of the tunnel, because we're going to reach it. We're all going to reach it together. So I'm very hopeful for creating a unity through collaboration, through connection with each other, creating spaces where we can understand each other and peaceful conversations, creating safe environment for those conversations, and ultimately understanding each other's differences. We all have different opinions that might contradict other persons, but we want to be understanding of of where we all come from, of what made us have this point of view, and focusing on tackling the issue, not necessarily the people. We want to work in harmony together, and so I'm hopeful that as a human society, we're able to reach that point. History has shown failures and successes and challenges, and so through that we'll get there together.
Thank you, Carlos. Annalie?
Thanks, Albert. Great question. Part of something that I want to leave as part of my legacy is to say that I was able to influence the next generation of new environmental engineers, budding little kids like my own, who I have taken it upon myself to really give them that experience. So whether that be me through mentoring or volunteering with them in some way, that's one thing that I want to see happen, is just to maybe like in 20 years from now, see more faces in conservation that look like me, that look like my kids, that look like all of us. I mean, any type of diverse arrangement of people coming to parks and working in parks. So that's really all.
Thank you. David, would you like to add something?
I guess everybody touched upon almost everything. The only thing I will say is that I've been blessed, you know, to have worked for the parks for 25 years. So I remember when I started 25, there's only two Latinos that worked at Captain John. Now almost everywhere I go, I see a lot more Latinos. So, and I kind of relate to them. I go and talk to them and kind of encourage them, you know, to either take, you know, some classes or whatever certifications just to move up. What I'm hopeful for is to see more diversity in leadership positions. I mean, I am so glad you know, Miri is where she is at now. I'm really, you know, admire basically, you know, like you say, Albert, you know, strong women, Latino women in leadership positions. It's great to see that, you know, because you can relate easily. As a Latino, I can relate to that, you know. It kind of motivates me to continue, you know, in that path or whatever. But and I try to do that to like I said, to the incoming, you know, workers, 2s or 3s, even leaders, you know, to try to, you know, get what they need to get eventually, you know, I mean, promoted and take advantage of the opportunities. So hopefully, you know, upon my retirement, and on another 10, 15 years, you know, see more diversity in, you know, key positions where we can make a difference, you know, and we have a lot more opportunities to make a difference. All right.
Gracias. Gracias, David. There you go. And then Darlene, would you like to add your response?
Yes, I ditto everyone. And I'm very hopeful because even we're having this platform today. So this is really, really a step in the right direction. I have to ditto with David, you know, just seeing more people of color, Latinos at the table, making these wonderful decisions about our communities, as well as our workforce. And so, but I am hopeful that, you know, what's happening now in this world, that there are more people of color everywhere who are now in agreement that things need to be changed. And so with that, I'm going to continue to do my part here in Montgomery Parks with the outreach, talking to hiring managers to make a difference in their own divisions, as well as my mentoring with these young people and who are eager and who have a whole different mindset of where this world is going and what they can do to contribute to the positiveness of making it a better place. And so with that, I am so happy again to be a part of this panel. It's absolutely wonderful that we can speak our voice, speak our truth, and know that at least this particular platform, there are people who are going to be joining us to make a difference. So thank you.
Thanks, Darlene. And I do want to take the opportunity and answer that question as well. The question was, what is one thing you are hopeful for? I think especially now during our troubling times with you know, health crisis, people have turned to parks. And I think as an opportunity to, you know, seek an escape. And then parks seems to be that place where they just feel so connected. I've seen so many people that are, getting to explore their local park for the first time, and I think that's the silver lining. So I feel very hopeful that people will continue to appreciate parks, become allies for these public lands, and hopefully one day also become part of the change to make parks better for everybody. So I want to thank all of the panelists and all of you for watching and joining us today. So before we go, I want to share another upcoming career panel happening on August 11th, which is Montgomery College is hosting a panel on careers in urban planning. You can register at bit.ly/August Career Pathway MC. Also, if you have any questions from today's session, or if we didn't get to the chance to answer your question, or if you would like to submit a question, you can contact us by email at info@montgomeryparks.org or by phone at 301-495-2595. With that, have a great weekend. We appreciate your time, your questions, your feedback, your support, and continue to celebrate Latino Conservation Week. And hope to see you at one of our 421 parks in Montgomery County. So thank you for everything, and hasta luego. Ciao.